Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, the co-director of curriculum of the Teaching Artists Project shares more on how they are aiming to help artists become educators. Then the president and health education coordinator of WHEDco speaks on their JAM program. After that, the Bronx site director of Callen-Lorde speaks on their recent announcement on the availability of same-day appointments. And finally, we look back at an interview with the executive director for the Better Business Bureau serving Metropolitan New York. So stay tuned. All this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne and today is Tuesday, January 14th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. The Teaching Artists Project from Community World Project is a comprehensive training and internship program for working artists who desire to incorporate social justice and social emotional learning into their teaching practice. This program supports Community World Project's global mission to facilitate culturally responsive, multidisciplinary art programs for students, teaching artists, and communities to develop and amplify their voices and creative skills. Here to tell us more is the co-director of curriculum at TAP, Jay Howard. Jay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get into the Teaching Artists Project, can you tell me a little bit more about Community Word Project?
Yes, Community Word Project is kind of like two arms. So we have a training program where we train artists to become teaching artists, whether they are new to the field or even if they have experience looking for a social-emotional context or a justice-oriented approach. We also have residencies where we send two artists inside of a classroom. One is always a writer, and the second one is a different discipline, and they work together to bring the arts to students and to other spaces as well.
Now, what inspired TAP or the Teaching Artists Project?
Our founder, Michelle Kotler, she experienced growing up in New York City public schools, and she was dyslexic. So she had some challenges learning, and then she had a sixth grade teacher who introduced music and started to drum inside of the classroom. And for her, she says that's when the vision was first started to form. 1997, she had a chance to pilot some of her ideas where she took her idea to train artists to Sarah Lawrence College. She worked with 5 writers. They worked together for 5 days to think through lesson plans, pedagogy, and really unpack what it means to build something together. They then also had some experiences where they were training and sitting inside classrooms before they had the opportunity to teach. From that experience, she learned that the most important thing is to have a valuable lesson plan, but also you should be able to uncover what your creative process is. We like to say that is the foundation of where our organization started. And then in 2001, that is where we have our model, where we send artists inside of the classroom for residencies, but also still do the training program as well.
Now, both CWP and TAP, celebrates over 25 years. Can you tell us how it feels to accomplish such a major milestone?
It's truly exciting for us, especially for me. I did the training program myself back in 2014, 2015. So I've had the pleasure to grow with this org the last 10 years. We've trained well over 1,000 artists in our 25 years who love to investigate their craft. So they're really working together. They're interested in learning how to take their creative process and translate it for others to learn. With that, we also had a chance to interact with so many students throughout our approach. We've reached now over 40,000 students. We're in New York public libraries. We are in so many different places. So for us, it's really about the reach, but we're just glad to be part of this conversation that is arts and education.
And kind of expanding on that, what role has community and collaboration played in sustaining the program?
I don't think we would be who we are without the role of collaboration. It's kind of embedded in our mission and values, the role of intentional collaboration. So we collaborate with our partners. So that might look like collaborating with schools. It might look like collaborating with funders to bring sure that we are bringing the right programs to our students. But most importantly, this is partnering with the field itself. We've had a chance to partner with the Arts and Education Roundtable. It's a big nonprofit organization. We've had a chance to bring forth an arts and education job fair for the past 10 years, the first 7 years at the Borough Manhattan Community College, and the last 2 years at Hunter Community College. We've also partnered with the Abrams Arts Center, Dwyer Cultural Center, so many different institutions across Bronx, Harlem, New York City, really for exposure, but also to bring arts into spaces that really need it. So for us, intentional collaboration is how we love to do this work.
Now, why is art education essential, especially in communities that face systemic inequalities?
For us, it's about giving power where it belongs, and that's back to the individual. We know that art can be uplifting and inspiring, but it's also a journey where people can learn more about themselves. We often like to say that art is an entry point into finding out who you are. And if you can uncover that a little bit more by dissecting your art, dissecting your interests, even if it's just a conversation, it's a container, we think about that and the power of arts for our communities within that.
Now, speaking of the power of art, can you talk about how TAP enriches students' lives and helps them find their voices?
Some of my favorite moments are when the wheels start turning for students inside of the classroom and you can start to see the connections that are starting to make. A lot of our students might have comfort with numbers, they might have comfort with the sciences or humanities. It's in those interesting spaces where we're marinated and immersing the arts and the education experiences where they can find a container, a form of expression to really think about who they are. So for me, it's really those light bulb moments, whether they're in first grade, kindergarten, or even in high school. And even for our adults who are also continuing to learning to grow and find that voice for who they are.
Now, we'd say arts, but I'm just curious, what type of art is it? Is it just drawing or just music? How do you guys explore the arts?
It's every single art form. So really, we always have one writer inside of a classroom, and then we work with a second discipline. So it can be visual arts, it can be dance, it can be photography. We've even worked with visual artists in unique ways. So for us, it's about how do we think about these two containers for a student to explore who they are and their interests.
Now, what impact have you seen or has this had on young people, both creatively but also academically?
Yeah, for us, it's more about like how do we think about the things that are already going on in the day to day, whether that's happening inside the classroom or the things that you're experiencing natural in your own world, and how we can use art as a conversational space for it. So a lot of the times we can see emotional maturity. We do a lot of things where we are doing a lot of interactive metrics. So they're physically interactive with the projects that we are kind of doing as well too.
Now, how does TAP empower artists to bridge the gap between art and education? And then also, piggyback question, what is it like, becoming a teacher when you've been doing art for so long?
Yeah, it's a journey, and for us, it's about that process. We all have these ingredients behind what inspires us to create, and we also have these creative ancestors, we like to say. So no matter what we do, we have creative ancestors, we have these creative elements and influences. For us, having these artistic conversations in an educational space allows us to integrate those two things together and see how those can kind of be in a conversational space. A lot of times we have these creative elements and we don't know how to put them into words. This is a space where we can process and investigate and kind of lean on each other to really think about like our creative elements and our talents.
Now, how does TAP center justice and equity in its curriculum and mission?
Yeah, it's embedded in our approach of radical love. Our work is a product of our joy, but also our work is a product of the communities that we're responsible for. A lot of our work is culture responsive, not just because the cultures that we're responding to, but because it's this right now moment. How do you think about our experiences? How do you think about who we are and our identities to really think about it as a learning model? So yeah, we're really culturally invested, but we're also like in this right now moment of thinking about the arts and its power for not just us individually, but for our collective communities as well.
And kind of, going off of that, in what ways does training artists, to become educators contribute to dismantling systemic barriers in education?
Yeah, we like to say that this is a journey that we can't do alone. So we're training the next generation of artists by allowing them to explore our creative process. And the more artists that we can interact with, whether they're adults, young persons, they're going to continue to reflect and continue to be in conversation with others. So this conversation continues to grow and we can see the impact growing, not just within our immediate circles, but we'll see the wavelengths continue to ripple.
Now, I love when I hear that programs are incorporating art into the school, just arena, just because It is so useful, especially when we're dealing with children who come from maybe low income backgrounds or are coming from areas that have faced so many challenges. It can be used. It could be used as so many different tools to help that child, especially if you don't know what they're going through or if they are struggling academically. So I love to hear that the work that you're doing. I think it's amazing. With that, how can individuals and organizations get involved to support this overall mission, especially when we're talking about our education and equality?
Yeah, that's an important question. We have something called the TAP Alliance, and the TAP Alliance is a network of organizations who work together to fill in the gaps of what's missing in the arts education field. So we host workshops together, whether that's on an artistic subject or an educational subject. We host panels, and we really allow the artists that are on our rosters to have a space where we can have larger conversations within the arts and education field. So if you have an organization, you can join our TAP Alliance and have access to these free workshops for your roster, for your artists themselves as well.
Now, what advice would you give to aspiring artists who want to make a difference in their communities or people who are already artists?
Yeah, we have this motto at Community Word Project that says, I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. So really just take that as insight. Find out the ways where you can truly flex your authentic voice. And that can be through arts, that can be through education. So really think about who you are and try to find an art form that really allows you for your voice to echo.
Now, what are the goals for TAP in the upcoming year?
Always intentional collaboration, because we can't move forward without intentional collaboration. Really, the TAP Alliance, we are integrating new workshops and new panels, not just ending with our job fair. We're really focusing on this idea of teaching artists sustainability. How can we turn this career into something that is sustainable from year to year and for the long term? But also, most importantly, of course, is just raising money to do the work itself. So we've done that in unique ways by partnering with some of our alums to do t-shirt contests where they're designing their own unique brands of identities, and people can like buy these t-shirts, not just to support our organization, but also support these artists as well.
And can you explain, how has this affected you? You said you've been kind of a part of the program for over 10 years now, newly 10 years, because
Yeah.
it's 2025. But can you just explain, what impact it's had on you?
For me, when I first joined the program, I was doing a lot of work with incarcerated youth. I had a chance to be an AmeriCorps member working for the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. And I was looking for a way to really put into language my passion for hip hop and poetry. So Teaching Artist Project gave me a space, a container to really process my talents, my interests, but really put it into a conversational space. It has allowed me to network in unique ways. It also has allowed me to find my own artistic partnerships. I'm collaborating with people because of the spaces that we've encountered. But also, I just love having conversations about like what people are creating. So for me, I fell in love with curriculum through this process and having conversations with others about how they could bring something that they're truly passionate about and turn it into a curriculum format.
Well, I just want to say once again that I love, just the overall mission and just hearing from you, it seems like it's benefiting both the children and the people involved. And I think it's amazing work that you're doing. And again, I just love to see that although academics are very important in school, that we don't kind of turn our backs to the arts because they can be so helpful to so many people. And I can imagine it's also therapeutic for the teaching artists as well. So with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us and kind of sharing a little bit more about your background and the work that you're doing to kind of help the community or children in the community out. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for having me today.
If you would like to learn more about TAP, please visit the website on your screen below. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
19.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
Welcome back. The Just Ask Me program at the Women's Housing and Economic Development Corporation is a peer-led sexual education and reproductive health program for students in 6th through 8th grade. The program provides awareness and knowledge to middle schoolers about sexual health and relationships. Joining us in studio to give more information about this program is the President of WHEDco, Davon Russell, and their Health Education Coordinator, Katie Shulman. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about the WHEDco JAM program and what inspired its creation?
So what inspired its creation was there was a group of young women, they were in the 7th grade at the time, back in 2007, who were expressing in a community service exercise that too many of their relatives, in some cases, or peers in the neighborhood, were experiencing early pregnancies. And they felt that there wasn't enough being shared with them about their sexual health. And they wanted more and advocated the school to incorporate sexual education, sexual reproductive health education into the curricula. That grew to a citywide advocacy effort and culminated in the city mandating sexual and reproductive health education into the school curricula across New York City, and the creation of the Just Ask Me program at our place.
Now, what makes this program unique compared to other after-school or community initiatives?
One of the things that we learned in, how do you reach young people, especially with information such as their sexual and reproductive health, was the idea of peer education. And that's one of the things that stood out for us, and that was one of the goals of the program at the time, built around the idea that these young people are going to learn from each other. Now, there is a bit of a disparity between the ages of the people who are delivering. They're in high school or in college, but they're delivering to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and they have found this to be a very efficient model because the disparity is not that great, and they do find that this group appeals to them with this information sharing. So it actually works.
Now, as you mentioned, it started back in 2007, and it's been some time since then, so of course things had to evolve. And what I think is super interesting is that over time there has been some curriculum changes, and I understand one of them is social media safety, digital literacy, and mental health, which, if I can remember, that wasn't super huge things that people discussed back in 2007. So can you talk about the importance of incorporating those topics, while we're teaching young women?
So one of the things I'll touch on just for briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Katie. The mental health aspect has always been a part of our ethos. We have always had mental health supports within our programs in after school, recognizing that our families are dealing with a lot of stressors. Shifting to the focus in the peer-led program has been new and started more around the time of the pandemic, because that just kind of unleashed a whole other set of anxieties. So Katie can talk a little bit more about what that has meant for how we push in with the students.
Yes, and in conjunction with the pandemic, obviously students were using screens and technology a lot more, and there's just over the course of years been the continued proliferation of social media and different apps and devices. So at younger and younger ages, young students are on social media whether they should be or not. And there aren't really guardrails or information guidelines given to them to traverse that very complex environment in safe ways. And so each year as we go back to the schools and ask parents and teachers and students themselves, what are things that are of a concern for your community? What are impacting the students day to day? Time and time again, we're hearing social media and phone usage. And so we wanted to make sure that this year and years to come that we're addressing that distinct need and talking about social media and digital literacy.
And speaking of social media, what are some of the biggest challenges middle schoolers face today?
So there's so much, right? And they're not really given that information. There isn't really that space provided for them, whether in their schools or back home or in their communities. So that's one of the great things that WHEDco is doing, where we're not just having these conversations with the students themselves during the jam sessions, but we're also having parent workshops where parents can come in and talk about how they can have these discussions with their high school students, their toddlers, whoever it is, to make sure that those support systems are implemented for them wherever they are in their lives.
Now, what I really would love to touch on, which I think is amazing, is that they're peer educators. Can you explain the importance of having, children kind of learn about heavy topics from their peers?
So definitely, I think one of the central tenets of our program, as Davon mentioned, is that we have our peer educators who oftentimes just a couple years ago were in those same seats that these students we're teaching are in. They have this very lived experience of what it's like to be Generation Alpha in the Bronx and understand what it's like to deal with dating and gossip and social media and whatever it is, that no matter how talented or educated an educator is who comes in, they're not going to be able to relate on that very personal, deep level that is so essential when we are talking about these very personal, sensitive topics. So it is very incredible to see, as the educator, see that very quick connection that the peer educators are able to make with the students.
Now, what kind of training do these peer educators go through to prepare them for their roles?
So we obviously are trying to empower them to become student leaders and educators within their peer groups. The goal is not just that they come into the workshops once or twice a week to teach middle schoolers, but that they're also an advocate and resource for their own friends and peers in high school and college. So we, of course, go through the JAM curriculum and going through these very nuanced, complex topics in depth and have these very enlightening conversations about how not just the information itself, but also how does the media portray it? How does society talk about it? How do our different cultures talk about it as we discuss these very personal topics? But then in addition to the curriculum, also focus on those professional development skills of classroom facilitation, public speaking, helping them feel empowered to take that stand at the front of the classroom instead of just sitting down and participating as a student.
Now, how does the JAM program equip middle schoolers with tools and strategies for self-care, which I think is very important because even adults now are kind of, tapping into self-care and what that means. So how do you convey that message to middle schoolers?
Yeah, I think on social media a lot of times there's some dangerous messaging of what self-care is supposed to look like. And so we focus on that there's a huge range of anything that looks like self-care, and it's very personal what your preference is, and that could also change throughout your life. So there is an activity that we do with the students where they develop their own personal toolkits. And they brainstorm 5 different things that they can do when they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, things that bring them a sense of calm or joy, people that they can talk to who can help lift them up. And we share ideas, and it's incredible. Like sometimes I have 15 different things shared, and it's never the same thing. So that helps emphasize that there's a lot of different things that they can do to cope with those stressors.
Now, I would love to hear from both of you. What role does community and family support play in reinforcing the lessons students learn through JAM? And I think this is also very important because community and family could also be maybe a challenge that some of the girls are going through. So when they do have somebody who's supportive, can you just talk about the role that plays and how important that is?
So family engagement is one of the true pillars of our work in all aspects, and especially when it comes to, you're talking about school-age children, where do family and what does family represent for them? One of the things that we start every year with is an outreach to families. And by families, I don't want to say parents, because in some cases they're caretakers and not exactly a biological parent or some other relative. And that buy-in is crucial, because we could do a ton of work at school, but then what happens when the student goes home? So it's important that families are coming in, and Katie mentioned the fact that we're doing facilitated workshops for families. That's a key portion of the work, is to get them involved as well, because in some cases, if you don't do that, then you're losing on the other end. So that's a very key part of our work, to get the families involved.
And just to expand on that, how can, just parents or community members watching, how can they get involved and support JAM?
Yeah, so we are always looking for more peer educators. So if parents do have a high school or college student going to school in the local area, we'd love to have them reach out. They're interested in learning more about sexual and reproductive health and all these other topics we now teach, and looking for that leadership role. That's definitely an exciting opportunity. And then we also have those parent workshops that are always coming out.
Now, what I think is super interesting is that everything is always changing, and what it meant to be a middle schooler 15 years ago is different from what it is now, and I'm sure it's going to change 15 years from now. So with that, how do you see the JAM program evolving in the future to meet the needs of middle schoolers?
The key thing is that we're always listening. I mean, it started with the listening to those young women back in 2007, and it's evolved over time to include always getting the feedback. We spent an enormous amount of energy hearing from the young people. We do the assessment surveys at the beginning of the year and are always thinking, what's next? And so we're listening to them, and we're, of course, observing what their world is like, right? We started substance abuse and bringing that back 2 years ago because New York was about to legalize cannabis. So that was an evolution and that we felt like we had to address. So it will be constant, always relying on what we're hearing from them and, of course, the reality of the world at that time.
Now, what advice would you give to other educators or community leaders looking to create similar programs to protect, youth in New York City?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of really great resources online. There's some curriculums and lesson plans developed by national organizations, but also we benefit living in New York City. There are a ton of different amazing organizations working on similar work and projects. And I think all of us are very excited and wanting to collaborate. There's power in numbers, power in that collaboration. So reaching out and making those connections and seeing what is possible is really like the way forward.
And I just want to say that I think this is an amazing program. I love to hear that it was actually from children who said, hey, this is something that I'm noticing and I'm not okay with this. Is there something that we can do to change this? I love to hear that and to see that so many years later
It
it's
was
still
powerful in real time.
Yeah,
It was powerful to watch them present the petition to the principal of the school.
Oh, wow.
And ask for signatures. It was just one of the most amazing things that I'd ever been a part of.
I think that's amazing. And, thank you so much for sharing that story with us and sharing what your organization is doing to protect those girls. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us.
And young boys.
Yes, and young boys, of course. Yes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
To learn more about the JAM program, please go to their website, WHEDco.org. Stay tuned. We have more for you right after this.
Hey Creative Family, my name is Timothy Coleman and I'm the Director of Education here at BronxNet. And I'm standing in BronxNet's Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx because I want to let you know about an amazing program that we're bringing back that highlights the creativity of community members just like you. Emerging Media Makers is a show that introduces you to BronxNet's certified producers. They've taken a step in their creative journey by enrolling in BronxNet's media training classes. On this show, you'll get to see the many ways that our certified producers have created a space that's all their own. Emerging Media Makers, your passion lives here.
Welcome back. Callen-Lorde is a global leader in LGBTQ plus healthcare. Since the days of Stonewall, they've been transforming lives in LGBTQ plus communities through excellent comprehensive care provided free of judgment and regardless of ability to pay. They recently announced that at their Bronx location, they now have same-day appointments available for both new and existing patients from any borough, increasing access to quality and needed health care. Joining me now is the Bronx Site Director for Callen-Lorde, Yadira Solano. Yadira, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, can you give us a brief overview of Callen-Lorde and its overall mission to serve the LGBTQ plus community?
Absolutely. Callen-Lorde Community Health Center has dedicated decades, of just time, to providing, I would say, sensitive, compassionate, competent healthcare to our queer community. It's really important that our patients, come to that we create a safe space for our patients. That when our patients walk through our doors, that they feel, safe, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel validated, they feel understood, and most importantly, that they feel welcomed coming to our site.
Now, I would love to expand on that and understand what makes Callen-Lorde a leader in LGBTQ plus affirming healthcare.
As many of you may know, we've been around for a very long time. Just being funded in 1969 in a time where healthcare did not support the queer community. It's been really important for us to really stand out, to really focus on cultural competencies, to really focus on affirming care, and just really keep our patients at our forefront and make sure, that we are providing the care that they need.
And I would love to expand on a term. For those who don't know, can you just explain what affirming healthcare means and why it's important?
Yes, affirming healthcare is really important. To me, it's how we see our patient, is how we validate our patient, how we respect our patients. It's really important for our providers to reflect the communities that they serve. Studies show that high outcomes in health when our providers really can reflect the communities that they serve. It's also really important, a lot of our providers are of the community. It's really important, particularly in our Bronx site, for me to have providers of color, to have providers that speak Spanish, so that when patients come in, they can, be able to see themselves in their provider.
And I love to hear that because I think that oftentimes people don't think about intersectionality, and they just think, oh, okay, you're a part of this community, so this is what you need. But to kind of focus on languages and culture,
Yes.
Added to that care, I think is so amazing. And I love to hear you say that. Now, can you explain how the organization has grown and evolved to meet the needs of the LGBTQ plus community over the years?
Yeah, we're ever changing. We're continuously trying to grow, trying to, change and expand. We've expanded, I would say, a lot in our services, our programs, our locations. Specifically at our Bronx location, we are the smallest site of all three, and currently we occupy a portion of the first floor in our building. And so the goal in 2025 is to expand and completely take over the first floor and the second floor. And this is just a primary example of how we continue to change and evolve to be able to serve and meet the needs of our community.
Now, are there any specific programs or services that cater to transgender and non-binary individuals?
Yes, absolutely. We have, gender affirming care. We have hormone therapy, and a host of support services for our transgender and non-binary patients.
And I would love to kind of expand on just what's available. Can you talk about how the organization educates community about PrEP and other HIV prevention options and just health education overall?
Yeah, PrEP is a big one. It's near and dear to our heart. PrEP is, I think first we could start a little bit just about talking about what PrEP is. PrEP, which stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis, is a medication that is used to help prevent the transmission of HIV. And PrEP can be given to our patients in two different ways. So one is once a day oral pill that's taken The second way is through a long-acting injection, which is administered every couple of months by your healthcare provider. PrEP is really important to us. We really try to, our patients, our providers, myself, our staff, nursing team, we're always trying to educate patients on what PrEP is, the importance of PrEP, and just really trying to get the word out there. We've been doing a lot of tabling, meeting with community partners and tabling out in the community to really build awareness around PrEP, especially, in the South Bronx and the location where we are, where the HIV rates are really high. It's really important for our patients to understand what PrEP is, and for us to try to get as many people as we can on PrEP just to keep everyone safe.
And with that, talking about PrEP and just HIV education, I also want to talk about stigma and what the organization is doing to address that stigma, because I think when we talk about education, we also have to talk about how the community perceives certain things, and what can we do as a community to kind of stop that stigma. But I'm also curious to know what your organization is doing to address that.
Yeah, we try to stigma, and that's something that we really try to work on, and really ensure that we have, diverse staff, inclusive policies. We want to make sure that our patients feel safe coming into our doors. It's really important that when we make sure that we provide care, to all patients regardless of status. So it's really important when our patients come in, that we create a non-judgment, stigma-free environment for them.
Now, your South Bronx location has same-day appointments available. Can you expand on this and why that is so important?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's crucial, I would say, particularly in the South Bronx, right, for us to provide as many resources and as much access to our community as possible. A lot of our patients are dealing with so many different obstacles and so many different issues. Our patients are dealing with food insecurities, with unstable housing, issues with childcare, right? A lot of times, coming to a doctor's appointment at a specific time and date is not really at the top of their priority list, right? When you're worried about if you're going to have a place to sleep the night, the same night, right? So, it's really important, for us to have the same day access appointments for our patients, and just be able to provide that access to the community. Our same day access walk-in appointments are Monday through Friday, the hours of 1 to 4, so our patients can come in. It really gives the patients flexibility to be able to come in at their leisure when they have the time to come in. And so, they can come in throughout those hours to be able to be seen by any of our providers. You can also walk in through those walk-in hours, Monday through Friday, 1 to 4, to access PrEP services as well.
And I definitely want to stress the importance and just how amazing it is to have same-day appointments, because I think it also can help with your mental health. I know if you are going through something, you don't want to have to hear that you have to wait like 3 months to see a doctor, especially if it is something that's a little bit more serious. So I think that is groundbreaking, and I love to hear that there's something like that available for people who need it most. So thank you so much for kind of just expressing that and letting people know where they can go about that. Now, how does Callen-Lorde engage in advocacy work to advance LGBTQ plus healthcare on a systemic level?
Well, we do a lot of work. We have an advocacy team dedicated to that work. A lot of that work is done through policy work, through education, and through partnerships. We engage with a lot of elected officials on different levels, and we really push to continue to advocate to elected officials, advocate for our patients, and to really continue to help them understand the importance of the work that we do. When it comes to education, it's really important for us as an organization to really stay abreast of what's going on a state and local level. So that way we can keep our patients informed of what's going on and be able to help them work through all of these changes that are happening. And, in terms of advocacy, like I said, we have an advocacy team that's dedicated to that. They, go to Albany City Hall all the time to just really advocate on behalf of our organization and really advocate on behalf of our patients and, just to continue spreading the word of just the importance of the work that we do.
Now, what can the community do to support Callen-Lorde and its overall mission?
I think just really understanding what we do, really understanding just the importance of the work that we do. Our mission, our goal is to really just to, again, provide, non-judgment, care, high-level quality care to our patients in our community, and to make sure that all people of our community feel welcomed, feel safe, feel loved, and feel heard, being able to come into our sites.
Now, I'm curious to know what inspires you most about working at Callen-Lorde.
It's really, it's being able to wake up, come to work, and know that I can help someone. Know that, specifically I would say at our Bronx location, it feels like a family. We are a small site, but I think we are a small and very mighty site. And, I think one of the things that stands out of our site is that patients come into our site, they know us. We know them by name, they know us by name. We have patients that come into our site just because they want to have a conversation with someone. And that, to me, it really makes me feel proud of what I do. It makes me feel happy that I can make someone else feel happy, and that, that our patients feel really just, we create a place where they can feel special and feel welcomed. Yeah, it really warms my heart and makes me feel happy. And just gracious to know that I'm a part of the mission and what we stand for and what we do.
All right, well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit more about the community that you've built at Callen-Lorde. With us here in the Bronx is definitely needed, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
To learn more, please visit their website at callenlorde.org. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. .5% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. .34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, Visit BronxNet.org to learn more.
Welcome back. It's a tough reality, but scammers are increasingly preying on individuals looking for relief from debt, offering too good to be true solutions that end up making things worse. Let's look back at this interview with Brian Rauer, the Executive Director for the Better Business Bureau serving Metropolitan New York, where we talk about how to recognize and avoid fraudulent schemes. Take a look. Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
Very welcome. Glad to be here.
Now, can you just talk about, why are credit repair and debt relief services such an easy area to scam others? And, what makes these people struggling with debt relief struggling with debt in general more vulnerable to these types of scams?
Well, I think you said it yourself. They're in a vulnerable position. I think people who are already behind in their payments, who are facing could be loss of their home, loss of their car, loss of their financial freedom, they're already in a very susceptible state. Some of them can be desperate. They could have a lien on their home, whatever the case may be. They're looking for any kind of a lifeline to get themselves out of this position. So the scammers are preying on the fact that these people could be in a desperate situation, and they want to trust, they want to believe that there's a quick fix. They want to believe they're overpromises, and they want to believe that someone can help get them out of this very quickly. So that's the reason why when we see a lot of these reports to scam, BBB scam tracker, things like that, a very high percentage of the people that are approached by this actually end up losing money to scams like this because they're so susceptible to this.
Now, how do people know which credit repair companies to trust if they are in financial trouble?
You can't always be 100% sure, but you want to at least go through the steps of checking legitimacy. So when you're looking at a company, you want to be very wary of someone that overpromises. So if they promise, for example, if it's a credit repair company, they say, I will guarantee you a 750 or an 800 credit score. We guarantee it. They have almost no information about you. They guarantee they will remove all negative marks on your credit rating, on your credit report. No one can promise that legitimately. No one can do that. No one can guarantee you an 800 rating. No one can promise that. They don't know your information, they don't know your specifics, they don't know your debts, and they guarantee that. It doesn't work that way. The credit reporting agencies, if the negative marks on your record are supposed to be there, if you really have missed those payments and they're completely accurate, they're staying on there for the requisite amount of time. Just because you challenge it doesn't immediately take them off and have them stay off. There's no way they can know that if everything stays on, if you have legitimately poor credit and there's no mistakes, they can magically raise you to an 800 overnight. Doesn't work that way. Credit doesn't work that way. So every time you see an overpromise, that's a sure sign there's a problem. Another real concern is when they they demand upfront fees. FTC rule from many, many years ago, for these services, things like debt relief, debt settlement, they are not permitted to charge you upfront fees before they've actually done their jobs and done the work for you. So if they're ever asking you for an upfront fee before they've done anything for you, that's completely impermissible. That is a scam. That is a company that is unscrupulous. Do not work with that company. So there were a lot of signs like that. If they pressure you, high pressure sales tactics, they contacted you out of the blue and you said, I need time to think about this. I want to research your company. Well, if it's an unscrupulous company, they don't want you to take the time to research them. So they're going to pressure you. Sign up now. This is a one-time offer. We're not going to talk to you tomorrow. That's another sure sign that this is a potential scam. So these are ways to really avoid. And by the way, there could be unscrupulous companies who maybe it's not a complete scam, but they bypass certain rules and regulations, and they're really complete scams, where all they want is your credit card information, your debit card information, your banking information, and you will never hear from them again. Complete and total scam companies. There's that group as well. And I should mention, there are, within this area, there are some legitimate companies that ethically treat their consumers, obviously. But unfortunately, it's also fraught with a large percentage of companies that do skirt the rules and regulations and don't treat you ethically. So.
And I think it's really important that you mentioned that even if the company isn't a scam, maybe they just aren't the best company to interact with if they are, taking these practices or, using these tactics to get you to work with their business. So I think that is just as important as looking out for scams as well. Now, BBB accredited businesses have agreed to adhere to the BBB standards for trust. And these are probably the businesses that are a little bit more trustworthy and that you'd want to work with. Can you just tell us, what are some of the BBB standards for trust?
Among the many standards, and I won't tell you about every aspect, we'll be here for several hours. I like talking about that, but the goal is trustworthy businesses. The word's built into it. You're looking for businesses that are transparent, that are open with their consumers. So if they advertise a price, that's the real price. There's no hidden fees. Whatever fees there are, you must disclose those up front. You must deal with your customers honestly, ethically. If you have contracts, abide by those contracts. You know, if you have promises or warranties, abide by those warranties. You know, every aspect of the sale for the product or service has to be transparent and open and conveyed to the consumer. No surprises. You can't have misleading advertising promising, you know, bait and switch, one price and there's another price. And when you're dealing with your consumers, if there's a problem, be available. Have easy contact information. They need to know where you are, how to deal with those problems, and then address your consumers promptly and address all their issues in good faith. You may not agree with them, but at least give them a place to complain. And if there is a refund due, provide that promised refund if that's the case. Convey all your policies. If you have a 7-day return policy, that can't be conveyed after the fact. It has to be up front. If it's no returns, tell them up front. You can't tell them after the fact. You want to safeguard their information. So if you have to have a privacy and a security policy, and tell people, are you monetizing their information and selling it to third parties? So hold on to that information and make sure that they know what you're doing with it. I would also say, if you're in an industry that requires licensure, we want to make sure that you're maintaining that licensure currently in any area that you're operating. If you're operating in New York City and Westchester and Long Island, and you need licenses for all three, make sure you have all those licenses in all those areas. So make sure you have your competency licenses. You know, overall, embodying integrity. You want to make sure that you're transparent, you treat your customers fairly, no surprises. There's a lot more information I could give you about that, but those are kind of the key areas that we look for.
Now, what are some red flags people should look out for when seeking credit repair or debt relief services to ensure that they are not being scammed or just going to run into something that's going to cause even more stress?
You know, you want to make sure that they're taking the time to get to know who you are as a consumer. So you want to make sure that they're extensively interviewing you, that you're telling them your entire situation. They want to make sure that they're telling you all your rights as a consumer. If they don't do that, then you have to wonder, why do they really want to work with me if they don't want to tell me what my rights are? So when you're checking out a company, and I would also, by the way, do a full background check on them. You can check them out with bbb.org. That's bbb.org, not what I said. And make sure that if there's any concerns that we've reported, that you're noting those. Just do a full background search on the company. Never give them your information up front until you're sure you know who you're dealing with, obviously. Make sure they're not charging you upfront fees. Ask for a schedule. What they often do is they stack fees. So even if they're not charging you the upfront fee, which they're not allowed to do, they could ask you to put money into like an escrow-like account that could be used for a settlement, if that's the case. But in maintaining that account, they could add on fees to that account. So you want to make sure you know all the fees, if there's any hidden fees. Some of the unscrupulous companies, they hit consumers with so many stacked fees that you end up paying almost more than that than is being paid to your creditors. So think about that. You've paid what you think is $10,000 to your creditors. Maybe $8,000 of that could be fees that you paid to the company. So you're treading water there. In fact, you could be underwater at that point. So make sure that you have a full schedule on the timeline. What products and services are they offering? What's the timeline for resolving my issue? How are they going to do it? You know, who are they working with? You know, you have to have a full contract that explains exactly what they're going to be providing for you, and they have to take the time to go through that contract, explain what each of the sections mean. And if they don't, if they say, listen, don't worry, just go ahead and sign here, that's a real red flag to walk away. They should want their consumers to understand what they're signing, what services there are, how do I cancel it if I'm not comfortable with this process. But it has to be an open and transparent process with the consumer. All the fees must be disclosed up front. There can't be surprise fees at that point. Make sure that they're not billing you again up front before the services are done, before settlements have been achieved. And then again, make sure they're not over-promising things that they really aren't allowed to promise you, things that they could never know will be done until they've actually done the work. You say, well, we can get all your creditors to agree with us. No. Once you've done the work and you have three areas of default, and those 3 creditors have agreed to do that, and they've started a payment plan, great. You've done the work, I made my first payment, then you go to the next step, which is paying their fee that's due, but only then.
Now that leads to my next question, which is so important. And the BBB website says people should refrain from services that offer a debt relief plan without education. And you said that, whoever you're working with is going to want you to understand what's going on. So how does your company educate clients on maintaining financial health and avoiding potential credit relief or debt repair scams in the future?
I think any good service is going to give you, and again, I'm not talking about us, but any business in this industry is going to want to accompany this with consumer education. If you've gotten yourself into this position beforehand, what's going to stop you from falling right back into those issues after the fact? So it's educating consumers on building a budget, on maintaining that budget, on not overspending, financial responsibility for the future, for the current and for the future. And if you don't combine that, you're going to have someone fall back into the same practices and the same problems and managing 20 different credit cards and maxing them all out. So it has to involve consumer education. And the more legitimate companies are going to combine that with consumer education. So they're getting you out of the problems you have now or helping you with those. And it's also helping you for the future. So we provide, I think, a great deal of information on what to do, what not to do, things to avoid, but we're just one resource. The FTC provides great information. You can contact the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. There are a lot of nonprofits out there that provide free services to consumers. So, we'll be a conduit. If we can help to provide you with additional resources and, steer you to other organizations and other groups and government agencies that may help you, we're happy to do that as well. But the bottom line is that unless you combine consumer education and changing the way you go about your business, you're going to fall right back into the same traps. So if you've been in credit distress for 20 years and you spent 2 years getting out of that, what's to stop you from falling back into the same patterns that have happened? So it's got to be involved in consumer education as well.
And I definitely think that's so important, and I definitely wanted to highlight that because financial literacy is so important. And I think, any organization that is claiming to help you without getting to the root of maybe the problem isn't the organization that you want to work with.
It's a Band-Aid.
Right.
It's not getting to the root of the problem. You're exactly right.
Exactly. So I want to thank you so much for joining us and really educating our community about this and kind of telling them what resources they can use to kind of help this situation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
If you would like to learn more about the various scams that are out there and the steps you can take to help protect yourself, please go to the Better Business Bureau website at www.bbb.org. We are always glad to have Brian join us on the show to help inform our viewers of potential scams that are out there. It has been a pleasure to work with the team at BBB, and we look forward to having Brian back on. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios, Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at BronxNet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Jaime on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.